People, it is the humble dude in his humble abode in not so humble Phoenix. It's very hot here right now. This asks Flowhard, who went bunny chasing today. Flowhard's looking at me right now. This is a live stream. Someday it will not be a live stream. It'll be a recorded stream. It's only live right now. So, as promised, we're going to be doing a pen and ink study of Norman Rockwell. The first thing you have to do when you pick out a subject is you have to find the right picture to work from. And I looked at a lot of Rockwell. I have a lot of Rockwell books. Flow right here, and I couldn't find anything that I haven't drawn 100 times. So I happened to be going through this Christmas book that Mike Barron got me for Christmas one day, and I was going to pick this Santa Claus right here. So we're looking at doing a Santa Claus Christmas picture in the middle of August. How appropriate. So if you look over here, you will see we have the ink over here. And I'm actually covering this up with tape now. I'm too lazy to just plain deal with it any other way. Now you got to be careful here with this stuff. You know this stuff spills all the time. So I need to stir it up. It's got some sediment in the bottom there. You can see it at the bottom of the brush. I've got a little bit of sediment going on there. So that's why you have to mix it. Always mix it up. And sometimes I'll add water to it. Sometimes I'll just add, ammonia, which I think is the actual whatever it is that is part of what breaks down the ink in the first place. So let's see. Let's grab some of our favorite pens here, which I currently don't even know what it is. There's so many options out there, people. I just don't know what to tell you. So we've got this big. Let's see. Here's a big 10-inch brush right here. You've seen me use this before. It's a King Art brush. They were the ones that replaced my beloved low Cornells, which I'll never forgive them for. Actually, let's just use the low Cornell. Right? Granted, well, that's why you have the damn things, right? I'm also going to put something over to in front of this ink and just spray it down a little bit. These are just things I just normally go through before I do any kind of pen and ink work. I lay this down, I lay this on top of it, and I've got my little sheet here, or my scratch pad, or whatever you want to call it. It's just something to put the ink on, so I know how the stroke is going to go on. So we've got to draw the thing in. We take a pencil, we sharpen it, and we very quickly will draw in the image. This is going to be not exactly a life-size image, but the hard part is going to be not Santa Claus. It's going to be this little key right here. I'm just going to use the standard method of drawing things in the normal construction that is recommended by mothers everywhere. I'm going to make a more of a sunbloom Santa, and that's where he's got the nose way up there. You guys know what I mean. Of course you do. Santa's always got a smile. He's just that kind of a guy. Very jolly, I'm told. You see how I'm symmetrically working out the proportions here of Santa Claus? This is something I learned from many years at various art schools. What's good for one side is good for the other side. Rockwell, as I'm often quick to point out, is someone who literally could paint as good as anyone that ever lived. Literally. And I'm not just saying that. This guy was really that good. Everyone knew it at the time. Everyone knows it now. There's a reason why he's literally the only excuse me, illustrator that anyone remembers nowadays. There's a reason for that. They don't know Wyeth. They don't know this guy or that guy. Unless you're a fine art snob, and then you only know Jamie Wyeth. I'm an NC guy myself. My roots go back to all the illustrators from the bygone years when it was really flourishing around the world, especially in the U.S. So we'll draw this little key, this tiny little key in here. And you can see how I'm constructing the body here. It's all basic shapes. We'll give him the legs of a little key and a big head. That's how you draw a little key. He's got cuffs on.
We have people starting to tune in.
Good. I'm told we've got people starting to tune in. This is always a good thing. Apparently, when I go on in the middle of the week, we get an international crowd. But in this case, a lot of you of Essers of A are writing in and calling, so that's a good thing.
We have someone named Watchman's Channel of Despair said, "Someone pinch me. I'm watching the legendary Steve Rude live, finally. Best wishes to you and yours, Steve. Thank you for doing these streams."
That's very nice. So somebody pinched the guy. Yeah, well, you know, it's very gratifying, as anyone knows, to have an audience of people that you've made their lives a little happier for, put a smile on their face. It's a big deal. Anyway, I'm glad you're tuning in. I also want to alert people to we've got a lot of very thoughtful people that are actually pledging money to go along with these live streams.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're so inclined to devote some of your weekly paycheck to keep me out of off the streets and working on Nexus, very good. I applaud you for it. Okay, so he must have his thumb come up here. I think to be a legend nowadays in comics, you just have to be alive. And you work in the field for over 40 years. So this, you know, look, there's some, what the heck? It's the dick. There are obviously, and I've noticed this, and I think all you guys out there notice it, there are things that are much easier to draw or paint than other things. This one is going to be relatively easy because there's a very strong light and shadow element going on. You remember last week or last Wednesday when I was trying to draw Ivan Straczynski, and the trouble I had with a watercolor. Well, there's a lot of people that say something like it's not the tool, it's the artist. Well, I don't agree with that at all. To me, it's the tool. I know exactly how this watercolor paper should behave, and this was just giving me unnecessarily and pathetically unreasonable, hard time. So Santa Claus has these. He's got ears somewhere. Okay, so that's going to be the start of the pen and ink here. Now I'm just going to grab. This is the Hunt 108. If you can see it here,
Mm-hmm.
It's got a nice close up there, Mr. Producer, Mrs. Producer.
Hold up a little
And
bit.
this is a very flexible nib. See that? This is going to give us a lot of lines, but the ink is going to also This is a very stiff nib. Some of the other nibs that I have here is, oh, that's another 108. Okay, this is a standard 290 or a 170 Jalot. So I think we're going to start off with that, and then we're going to see what happens here. I'll start on a fairly innocuous area here. The last pen and ink demo went over very big, so I'm very glad to hear that. I know we've got a lot of people that are into pen and ink out there. Normally, when an artist starts, he's always a little, he kind of creeps up on it a little bit. He's a little rusty. I haven't drawn all day. I've been outside doing this and that, and swimming in the pool, hard stuff like that, going to the gym and all that. By the way, if you guys out there are getting too sedimentary, you really need to think about exercise. A lot of artists have mood swings, and I'm no exception. And some of you aren't either. So the only thing I know that cures that is those endorphin things that start flooding your body when you exercise. The dude here is always kept in shape. My writing partner, Mike Barron, is always kept in shape. And I recommend that we all keep in shape together here. We want a long life. So just like when I was drawing this thing, I'm looking at one side to the other, making sure there's symmetry going on here. I think I located a little key okay. And when I do this area right here, I got to remember how the hair kind of melds into the flesh on the side of the head here. So what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of establishing my parameters, my draftsmanship parameters here. I have worked in pen and ink, my God, since since I got into comics. Actually, way before that. I've been practicing pen and ink since 1981, and I'm still working at it. It doesn't want to give up its secrets with much ease. Did somebody pinch that guy yet? Okay. This is a really good pen to start off with right here because it's kind of a non-committal pen right here. It's just got enough in there so that if you happen to go too dark on the ink strokes, you're not going to look at something later on and say, "Oh, this is too dark. I can't fix it." Well, obviously, you can fix anything in art. You have to be able to do that. Here's some nice wrinkles on Santa's personage here. I've always worked with traditional materials. I never imagined a time when there wouldn't be traditional materials, but the world changed. While I wasn't looking, the world changed.
We have a question.
Okay, we have a question. Question.
Someone says, what does Steve think of Robert McGinnis and his egg tempera and gouache illustrations? And has Steve ever tried egg tempera technique?
I've known a lot of egg cakes, but I've never tried egg tempera before. Egg tempera, it's funny. Think about it like this. When you have eggs for breakfast or whatever, the actual yolk part, which is what they use as a binder for paint, for the powder, is actually a pretty firm surface. It's kind of sticky. And you have to scrub it hard to get it off. Well, that's exactly what you want when you're working with a binder with paint. So McGinnis, I actually have his video that shows him working on this beautiful girl. No, I think egg tempera, or just plain tempera, or gouache, or what are the other ones? Just opaque watercolors, pretty much opaque watercolor. There's not a whole lot of difference. You're either going to draw dry, waterproof or non-waterproof. Something like casein. This has a different kind of a binder than the pigment, the powder pigment. That's how all paint starts. That is permanent, So it's a very interesting thing to experiment with. Is all these different kind of paints. I remember when I met the great illustrator John Berkey. He lived in Minnesota. John Berkey was an illustrator for his entire life. A really nice guy. And the first time I visited him was when I was in Wisconsin in the mid-'80s. And me and some guys drove up to see him. Eventually, I returned to see him again. And this time was just fantastic. He didn't know me that well, but he treated me like I was his son or a brother or something. It was just amazing. And we went out to dinner, and Janelle was along. It was just a great time. John Berkey was the kind of guy that would take his time with you. He worked. His studio was his basement. We don't have studios in Arizona. We don't have them in California when I lived there, but we have them back home. I'm from Wisconsin. He's from Minnesota. And he had the entire basement to himself. And he showed me the working area where he would grind his paints. He had a little mixer, an electric mixer, handheld kind, and he told me, he said, anything you could imagine eating or something else, I don't remember, you can try to use it as a binder for paint. And he did. He tried everything. He ended up working. Why do I have these hairs on my face? I can just tell they're there. Walmart, is that your fault or is that you, Dick? He would mix he found out that the perfect medium for him was acrylic combined with casein. So that means the paint was permanent when it dried. I'm going to keep doing this. And it just worked for him, and he used it his whole life. If you've ever seen his painting setup, it's just magically cool. It's just remarkably innovative. Yeah, if you get any books on John Berkey, John's gone now. He left his widow, Demi, I think. Anyway, I just had the greatest time with him when we went that second time. John was the kind of guy also that when I said, "Can you do a demo for me in my sketchbook?" He'd do it. There's no messing around, this guy. You wanted him to show you something, he'd show you. So naturally, the dude followed suit, being precisely that kind of person himself, as well as being a Boy Scout, first class, not an eagle. And that's what your life is made up of, is moments like that. Take risks, people, because risks are what make your best stories in life, assuming you survive them, of course. So what's going on here with my opinion? It's starting to falter a little bit. The only thing I know how to do is either spray it with that 409 stuff, or just wipe it as clean as you can. These things don't last long, and I don't even know why. They should work perfectly fine if you clean them. But life being what it is, making very little sense at times, it's hard to say why. Why anything. But just for good measure, I'm gonna spray it down over here. Let's get the camera over here so you can see exactly what I'm doing here. So you see, I'm just kind of mishmashing it around right there. Now this thing should work fine, but there's no guarantees in this life except pizza delivery in 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm going to get it nice and clean. Is it going to work? I don't know. You just don't know these things. But that's as clear as I can make it right now. So I'm going to shove it back into this this Japanese pen holder thing. You've seen the American version of this. It's a skinny brown thing made of plastic. This is made of wood, and it's so much more easier in the hand. Than the American skinny stuff is about this long, but much skinnier. Do they realize it's got to fit into your in the palm of your hand? I don't know. Comfortably. So let's hear from people from. I'm just gonna pick one out of the blue right here. Let's hear people from North Dakota. I've never had anyone writing from North Dakota. So all you guys out there, you know who you are. Let's see if we can scare up a few people from North Dakota here. And if that doesn't work, we'll go on to the next state. Okay, so it's kind of behaving here. I always use the scratch paper to get the ink flowing. Sometimes if you don't do that, you touch this nib to the paper, and you get this incredible blob of ink coming out. Dip, dip, dip. This is the dip-to-dip-to-dee version of art here. All you guys that are transfixed by computers, you can have them. This is the way I learn. This is the way I enjoy it. This is the way I'm going to keep doing it. But we seem to be a vanishing breed for some reason. The darks are going to come in eventually, and that's you'll be here to watch that too. That's somebody. I think that's somebody from North Dakota calling, except they're on the wrong line. So a little bit here, a little bit there. I guess we need to dip a little deeper here. All right. So now that we've got things pretty much, there we go. That's working like it should. I think it's the direction based on gravity sometimes. And if that doesn't work, I'll rethink it and come up with a new one. These live streams are an interesting process here. You really have to be on your toes with these things. You can't just go off at anything you want. You have to hold the audience. Okay, so it's working pretty good right now. I can forgive this thing for what it did earlier to me. It's starting to. So this is the way pen and ink works. It's you know, you go from that to this to that. Okay, and then if you want to get denser, you can do the cross hatch thing. This is hatch. This is cross hatch, and there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do this. And honestly, you just have to experiment with it over and over and over. And if you like doing this stuff, you're in the clear.
We have someone asking about your opinion on Howard Pyle, I'm assuming it's
Howard Pyle.
Howard Pyle.
Sure.
He says, owning a number of his books, Robin Hood, etc., and a fan of many of his Brandy
one, yeah.
students like New York. And yeah, what are your feelings about him?
Well, the first thing I want to point out is that Pyle had a lot of female students, which is a good thing, because back then, to be a female artist was difficult. You had to basically you were condemned to be a housewife back in the early 1910s, 20s. Someone had to raise the kids, and everyone was having kids. So the male of the family, who was the artist, would traditionally be the one that would carry on that particular job. Pyle was remarkable in the way that he, I guess in the way that all teachers are, that want to pass on what they've learned. And that was definitely Pyle. And he got this student and that student going over in Wyeth, MC Wyeth, and I think it's Shipley and some of the people. Let me put the darks in here while we're. Let's see if I can get this pen, this brush working. There's nothing that says you can't use a brush, unless there's a rule book somewhere that I never read. Flag, Montgomery Flag was really big on using a lot of brush work with his painting. So let's see. I've got to match some of the very fine lines here that I've got with the pen. And if you get a nice, a nice pointed brush, as I call them, you can do it. People that make it in life are people that want to make it in life. It's kind of like the Eddie Van Halen thing. While he was, all his friends were out going to sock hops, he was in there practicing his guitar. But he didn't do it because it was something that was forced on him. He just wanted to do it. You try to force anyone to do something that they'd rather not be doing, it's going to be an uphill battle. Or rather just a battle, period. I'm going to switch over to a pen again. And I wonder if there's something in here that I can use that might suffice for that very thing. Let's grab the Hunt 108 here. I often don't even remember the names and numbers of these nibs right here. This pen gets a lot of flexibility, but it's also very stubborn. This is a kind of pen that's so flexible that it will literally blob you out. But if you can get it working, you're going to be doing good.
One question we have is, Steve, do you listen or watch music or podcasts when you're drawing all day, or do you prefer silence?
I asked Drew Struzan that once when I was over at his house. I said, well, I thought he must listen to something. He says, no. But that's not true. He often had the TV on. I listen to a lot of stuff. I listen to a lot of books on tape, which is an advantage that the artists have over the writers. The writers could not have something going on with spoken words when they're trying to do their thing. And when I started writing my own stories, I found it out very fast. Writers need quiet. So we're encountering a little bit of stubbornness here with the Hunt 108. It must be severely disciplined following this broadcast here. Okay. Yeah, remember I said gravity had something to do with it? Well, of course I was right. So that's what I have to say about Howard Pyle. He very selflessly devoted a lot of his life to teaching. He had his dozen students that were always very successful. Let's try some different directional strokes here. If I can get this 108 working here. These have to be done with care. This thing's not working, so I'm just going to move over to the, I think it's the 170 July. If you guys aren't keeping these names straight for all these pen nibs and the numbers, don't worry, nobody does. Yeah, this is where you have to really kind of think about what you're doing here. I'm going to hatch in here, cross hatch a little bit too. So you can see the way pen and ink works. It goes from light to dark, dark to light. I like practicing this stuff. It's fun. And traditional comic book inking was always done with in this way right here. remember when I moved to Pasadena. That was a great. Oh, that was so great. I was in my mid-30s, and there was still a lot of socializing going on. It was just a lot of fun. And I would challenge some of the best artists working in the illustration field. I said, "Well, try pen and ink." I said, it's not easy. And they found out fast it was much harder than it looks. I had one guy who was so embarrassed by his effort, he signed his painting not by his real name. He signed Chad Riboflaken. So that's for you, Eric. A lot of dipping going on. These transitions are something you really have to focus on. And when I get to that little key, hopefully sooner than later, we'll see how I try to deal with it. That's the kind of thing where I might even go in and pencil stroke the thing out first. I was looking at some Bernie Wrightson work yesterday from Frankenstein. And the whole idea that a comic book company would publish it is kind of absurd. Marvel ended up publishing this thing, but this is some of the most amazing fine art. What he did here is, he actually matched the grades with that book. And Bernie always made a thing out about talking about breaking his wrist. And I don't know. I'm going to guess that Frankenstein was before he injured his wrist. So you can see, this is something I want to point out here. This is a really dark here, right? So dark. And this is a halftone area. It's light hair, so it has to have kind of a uniform grayness to it. So I've got to somehow, and this is a lot more finessing and difficult than it looks. I've spent billions of hours on trying to figure this out right here. So, 100 years later, you might tend to get it down. But no, Bernie would pencil everything out very tight first. He left nothing to chance. I always leave plenty of chance. So you see what I'm going for, guys? Kind of a uniform gray pattern, but with different directional strokes. Okay, so this 170 here is a great. It's cooperating. It's doing a fine job here. So we're going to reward it with a merit badge later on, or something meritorious. There's a word. There's a good college word. So I don't know who's tuning in, the age group or whatever, but I hope you guys are sleeping at night. There's a lot of guys that have trouble sleeping at night that I've been made aware of, which is kind of a funny thing. I don't think any of us have problems falling asleep when we were little kids. But sometimes as we age, things can get altered a little bit. It's kind of a weird situation.
We have someone asking, do you ever ink on a horizontal surface where you can spin the paper while inking?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that I haven't been doing a lot of that already. I always spin the paper, yeah. Why I'm not doing it now, I really don't know. I actually did not even think about it. Another guy I really like for inking. I'm going to take a thirst break here. He's Barry Smith. Barry Smith is just a remarkable pen and ink guy. I just love the way he inked. A guys, it's Arizona. You have to drink out here. Yeah, Barry Smith. I mean, his work was back in the mid '70s and all through the '80s was just incredible. You wouldn't believe how good this guy is. And he developed these patterns. We have some example of his work down here. We just might do that. Well, here's some of his fully painted work right here. So if you get a nice close-up of that, you'll see the incredible amount of care and detail this guy would put into his work. He just was a magician. Barry was one of these guys with a strong artistic temperament. And that kind of, as to that, if that reflects the work, I don't know. I don't think it really does. I mean, he could be the mildest guy in the world and still do work like this, but it's hard to put a label on that. Your particular sensitivity and temperament level. But yeah, Barry was the kind of guy that would fret and worry about everything he did. But I just love what he did. He's just a master of everything. Do we have any pen and ink examples down here of his work? Well, I'm looking. Oh, here we go. Just so happens. Oh, this. How fortuitous can you get? Bernie Wrightson, I'm going to set it up right here, okay? You see how amazing this work is right here. So we need our nice close-up on this right here. This is a level of craft that is just, I think you have to be a practitioner of this art form yourself to realize how amazing it is. So what we need is a close-up on an area like this. So let's see if we can get that for everyone watching out there. Isn't that something? Boy, I tell you. Everything about it works. I mean, there's just literally not a thing that's out of place. A lot of people can get a little lazy on the outside areas, outside of the so-called target area. Bernie never did that. This stuff right here has as much care as anything in the figures, which is the thing that artists tend to like the most. We'll move on to, here's some Barry Smith stuff right here. This is some of his '70s work right here. I've been examining the way that he does his ink strokes, and he's just magical. If you look down here, you'll see some of the pen and ink technique that he would use. It's got a very old world look to it, but he brought it into the 1970s and continued to throughout the 80s. It's just remarkable work. The care that he put into this stuff is incredible. And it's probably no coincidence that Bernie Wrightson and Barry Smith shared a studio together. What else do we have here? Okay. Here's a close-up of some of his work right here, some of the ink strokes. So you guys take a look at that while I'm getting back into Santa Cruz. All right, so far we're doing pretty good, a lot better than the last demo. So little kid. Can't see the little kid right now, but let's just try to. Before you do something like this, you really have to know how kids look. You have to know their construction, their proportions, all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, Rockwell was using oil paint. We're going to move these examples here out of the way first. And Rockwell was infallible, of course. They gave him some longer hair in the back. I'm gonna scratch it out or white it out or something eventually. Now, first, I think I'm gonna outline the thing first to get to nail my drawing part done, and then I'm gonna go in there and just nail it if I can. This is why you practice so hard. To me, practice is fun. It's not work. If it was work, I'd feel like anyone else about it. I wouldn't do it.
We have another question in. Someone saying, Mr. Rude, I've heard different comic artists say that the ink and paper today doesn't hold up to what used to be produced. Have you found a combination of ink and paper that suits your needs?
Yeah, not being one to hold back anything. Um, Truth is the truth, and bad stuff is bad stuff. I remember the last time I was working for Marvel, they sent me a batch of their paper, and this is after well into the mouse years. And the paper that we sent me was about as thin as this Xerox paper. In fact, I would say it was thinner than this Xerox paper, this copy paper. I ended up giving it to my little girl. I said, "Here, get your crayons out and play with this marble paper." It was so bad. So there's no excuse for that kind of stuff. The stuff they used to use, and what the stuff that I'm using here is Dark Horse paper. This is the stuff they use when they would send out our art boards, as they call them. You can see the Dark Horse label of it. But I think this is actually what uh, Marvel and used also. Same paper plant. And this is excellent, like 3-ply, 2-ply Bristol, I think. It's smooth. It's just wonderful stuff. And I did all my work, all my comic book work on this excellent paper here. Let's put the little kid in these little sock things. He's got slippers, yeah, slippers. Of course, I do that. A lot of nice people writing in here, calling. This is very nice to hear. Don't forget you can pledge whatever you feel inclined to want to do. Another thing is this is an announcement that I want to put out to all of you out there that are artistically inclined. We are looking for a designer for Rude Dude. That means you'll get a chance to work with us and help produce the books that we do. Rude Dude basically is a thing that supports myself doing the latest work I've been doing on Nexus, which I'm writing and drawing and inking, lettering, and everything else that I can think of. We're also working with a very talented colorist named Glenn Whitmore, and Glenn is amazing, so we're going to definitely hang on to him. Now, let's see here. Okay, so I've got the little key. I'm going to make some flourishes here. Flourishes are what I call, see, how does that hand work there? Well, we're just going to have to figure it out.
Someone said, or asking, when you're inking, do you have a system of filling in the blacks at the beginning or the end? Or does it change for you depending on the piece?
Yeah, it's that's a good question. These were the things I used to sweat over when I was like 19. I think a lot of people that are writing in are around that age, which is great. They need to be counseled with this advice here. Run the question by me one more time.
When you're inking, do you have a system of filling in the blacks at the beginning or the end?
Yeah, I don't really have a system. You wake up every morning and you're ready to go at it, and your whatever it is you're feeling at the moment just tells you where to go. Sometimes, to me, pen work is a lot easier than brush work. Brush work, you've got to get the brush working just right. Otherwise, it's gonna be a little hard to control. Most people, I tell you, there's brush people, there's pen people, and there's everything in between. I use both, obviously, as you can see here. And there's no set system to any of it. I would say that the best way I can advise you is to do what feels right at the time. So I know a lot of what goes on in comic books is kind of production line stuff, which is important for publishers. I think a little less important for artists. I think artists want to make sure that before they send their work out, it's the way they want it. Publishers publishers have a different need. They need to get the work out in time, and this used to be true for everything, in all aspects of publishing. The last 20 years, it's all gone to hell because people don't make deadlines, they don't take them seriously, and the comic book publishers that allow it to happen are to blame. You can either blame somebody or blame yourself or whomever, but I used to get called in to work on DC projects because the main artist was late, and nobody makes deadlines anymore. Back in the 60s, when I was reading comics, still the best. There's no question. They were the most superior comics ever produced. Mostly Marvel comics. I just loved the 60s Marvels, which they base everything they do on now. These books were never late. I mean, they were, when you worked back then, you made the deadlines or you were out. And how people learn to get fast, I don't know. I remember hearing something from different pros saying, "Well, Steve, once you're in it for a year and you kind of get it down, you'll be able to increase your speed." Well, what nonsense that turned out to be. I never got faster. I always stayed at the same pace throughout my entire career, which is about a page a day, drawing, just penciling. Inking a page would take me about a day too. Obviously, when you get into panels with an incredible amount of technical things you have to work out, you're going to slow down. I mean, why would you not? It's impossible to speed up and things like that. You can't just suddenly say that everything is a work like that with me. Some panels are very simple. Others are incredibly complex. And when you go to ink them, that's not something you can just dash off. It doesn't. It takes a certain amount of time to do this kind of stuff. And that means for a lot of people that they were still working on the deadline system, that they would have to increase their work hours, whether they liked it or not. By the way, speaking of 1960s Marvels, look at this incredible stuff right here that came out of John Romita back in the 60s. This guy is the Spider-Man artist to beat all to me. He's just unbelievable. I had the good fortune of meeting John Romita many times. It was just every time was fantastic. A gentleman to the core. I also had the opportunity a few years before he passed on, or I actually visited him in his home in New York, Queens, I think it was. And it was not the house that he was producing this work in. That was decades earlier. But this stuff right here, I mean, look at those folds right there. Everything fits and it feels exactly right. His poses were just incredible. And I use these things as an example of how good things can get. And he always made his deadlines. This is a fairly simple thing. Most of the work is in the figure drawing. This is just two figures in a trash can. This is not really that complicated, neither is this, but it's amazing what I've always heard about how your mind fills in things that aren't there. And with this Romita Spider-Man work, he filled in every gap I could ever have in my head. So he was just, to me, he's the greatest. There's another one right here. But I love to point out the great guys that I grew up with. Look at that pose right there. I mean, that's just incredible. Spider-Man is just is being knocked off his perch on a chimney way high up in one of the areas in New York. His storytelling was impeccable. The guy did no wrong. He was just incredible. got a little stylized, a little formulaic later on in the 70s, but we can forgive. Back to Santa Claus.
We have a bulk of questions and comments. If
Okay,
you wanted,
bulk of questions and comments. So let's find out who it is in this hamstring.
all right, by someone named Farbin. He says, "What does Steve think of Gary Martin's inking book, and how the other artist inked Steve's pencil pages?" I was always curious about it because it was my first time seeing Steve Rude's work back then.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Gary Martin's book was very comprehensive. Gary's a very conscientious inker, and spends his life drawing and inking. And the book that he put out was quite a stir when it first came out. There were some books on inking that were out by then, but not a whole lot. And he even had the good sense to include actual Bristol paper, good Bristol paper, in the book, where you could actually tear it out by the staples and experiment for yourself. After reading this book, finding out about nibs, what works, inking nibs, what works best, what kind of effects you can get. Yeah, this is an excellent job. As far as inquiry goes, that's another subject of great fascination right here. Obviously, I learned through working in the field as long as I did that everyone's got a different touch. And some are suited for you, and others just not quite have it. I also want to point out that slick lines do not an inker make. That's a secondary thing. There's a lot of guys that have incredible control with a pen, and other guys that just kind of are loose about it. But honestly, my preference is, if you look at the Rip Kirby work, I'm going to change direction here with the strokes. So as long as you keep it uniform, you're going to be okay.
We have a comment by someone named Vincent. He said, "Some of the best things I learned about inking was the book you did with Gary Martin. Thank you, because there was factual advices to make the art look professional. The art of comic book inking."
Yeah, so that was Gary's book, The Art of Comic Book Inking. Gary Martin is a veteran in the field, as I claim to be. And he just put out a book on his art. I've seen it, it's very good. So if you want to continue looking at some of the work that he's done since that book was published, that's the book to get. A lot of self-publishing going on these days, which I think is great. If you don't like the way it's done by somebody else, do it yourself.
Okay, and Landon is asking, or he says, "Hey Steve, it's cool to see you streaming again. When I was a kid, my parents had a large Norman Rockwell book. It was a family gift. That was an early experience in my life, which was one of the things that majorly influenced me.
And the person's name was who?
Landon.
Landon, okay. No relation to Michael Asen.
He says, it made me want to be an artist. Rockwell is incredible."
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear that. I think, art is the gift that keeps expanding itself in your life. There's no such thing as using up all the people that are out there that have worked in the field. I was born in the 1950s, so I got a chance to see everyone who was still doing it in the field of comics, in other areas too, illustration. So I came around at just the right time when it came to this kind of stuff. And I think the reason I'm pointing this out is because I got a chance to meet these guys and tell them how great I thought they were and learn from them personally. So that was just, honestly, it doesn't get any more cool than
Marcus says, Norman Rockwell went to my high school when it was a one-room schoolhouse in assuming it's Mamillon, New York.
Oh, that is priceless. Some guy just wrote it and said, Norman Rockwell went to my high school. Well, how cool is that? Am I going to change the ink strokes here? Yeah, I think I will. Let's do that just to keep you guys entertained here. So if we have a nice close up on that, we're going to be able to see exactly how I'm doing it here. You see how I'm trying to keep the pen strokes uniform, so there's not an out of place dark going in there. This is what takes so long, is to learn stuff like this. So you can see there's a little area right here that's a little darker than the others. So I'm just going to go over the area a little more again. As we really slow down and try to get your circles right. I'm going to do these also like this. They stand out a little more. Yeah. Boy, this was the time to be an illustrator. Now that time has passed, as all days do. And that's another reason to really take seriously the time that you're here while you're here, and take advantage of that. The whole world is your reference stations. So use it. Use it in a way that most benefits your life. The wonders of the 170. Now we're also going to be going into, so there's a little key. There's little Jeffrey right there. Pick your own. I'm going to go into this area again, darken some of the areas because it's going down a little bit. It's going over a form. And when it goes over, it goes from light to darker. We need a drink, a stiff one. You guys entertain yourself with what I've done so far, as well as the Spider-Man work. I'm going to get a drink. We're back. I think you can probably tell. On the Steve Root Hour, we never do anything to deliberately insult our audience, because I know how smart you guys are. We're going to field some questions before I get back in the pen and ink here, but I think what we need here is some really good close-ups on what I've done so far. So literally, like this kind of area right here, if we can get the cameraman to take care of that right there. You really need to get close-ups when you're doing art videos, very close. People want to see the image very tight. So if Mr. Producer has got everything lined up just right, we should be seeing a very tight close-up of the little key. It's an okay job. It's not bad. I don't think I could have done it when I was 19. I would have tried. So to me, it's got just enough of loose and just enough of tight. I have a medium control over my tools. I'm not somebody with a really slick brush stroke. It doesn't fit my personality. I want a little human touch in there. If you guys look at the work of Rip Kirby by Alex Raymond that came out in the 50s and the 40s, boy, that's the stuff to look at. That's the stuff I think is incredible work. Raymond was a brush guy. when he worked on Flash Gordon. And later on, when he worked on Rip Kirby, a daily comic strip about a detective and his beautiful blonde girlfriend, Honey Dorian, you'll see that he went from incredibly tight brushwork to a lot of very loose pen work. And that's kind of how I want my work to look these days. As far as the subject of inkers goes, there is, I don't know where the art of inking is going to go these days. My generation was, and the one that came just after me, was still immersed in the practice of inking on actual paper and using traditional tools, pen nibs, brushes, all that kind of stuff. Who knows what's going to happen? But you can't stop progress. It's always going to go forward. If you call what they do now forward.
Okay, someone is saying, or Landon again, he says, "Hey Steve, I heard you mention in a previous stream that you were cutting down on the conventions. I was wondering what your reasoning was for this. I, myself, am questioning their effectiveness."
Yeah, I go to conventions to meet people. I don't, a lot of people, it's kind of an income thing. I've never had a need to do that or the temperament to do it for money. But the reason is very simple. I started off this business in the early 80s. Well, it's 2024 right now. And so it's a case of having been there, done it. I think. Really, that's kind of what it comes down to. That's kind of a semi-dark area. But I'm going to try some fancy stuff coming up on this area up here.
Oh, Landon's comment continues. He says, "So I myself am questioning their effectiveness in promotion for comic book artists and illustrators. The increased table prices combine with the decreased focus on comic creators and instead focus more on pop culture / celebrities."
Yeah, good point. Landon is obviously a guy with a great sense of, keen sense of observation and intellect here, like all the people that like my work. Everything he said is true. Honestly, I think if you like going to them and you actually genuinely enjoy meeting the people like I do, and going around to the other tables and meeting the other people and cross-germinating ideas with them, then it's fun. That's when it's fun for me. That will always be fun. There's a lot of people that actually do a convention a week. And these are guys that their income depends on that. Mine never has, thank God. But I tell you, I feel, I see these people that are just starting out, and they have the courage and the sacrifice to publish their own work. And they're very desperate to get it seen and quit their job at McDonald's or something, to be doing this full time, which is what we all want to do. And it's a lot. The world has changed so much. You guys are going to see this when I'm long gone, and then the people that come up after you are going to see it too. That's the way the generations work. I'm going to keep going this a little longer here. I didn't get much sleep last night, so that's my excuse for not continuing the entire thing here. But we will be posting this thing when it does get done in its entirety. But basically, the way you see I'm working now is the way I'm just going to continue to finish this. So let's see if we have the stamina to keep going here, keep you guys entertained.
Vincent commented, "John Romita is one of the best artists ever. His Spider-Man is really praised here in France." It's the reference.
Glad to hear that. Yeah, I'm sure. This is something. I got to tell you guys something. Back in the '60s, these guys were just workhorses. I mean, every single day they had to get up and produce. And there was anyone who could not get the work done in time was I think looked at in less favor than the guys that could. So you learn to get your work done. Well, this 170 is working so good here. I wish they always worked this good. The reason it's working good is because it's not stalling on me. It just continues to cut. The ink is flowing off the pen here just the way I want it, without having to dip in every 5 seconds. So this is a case where I am actually turning the page a lot. Let's try some, well, let's see here. So this is kind of a medium value red. Red tends to be a little darker than medium actually. And if you want to change it up every now and then, change the stroke direction. As long as the value stays the same, a gray is either dark or it's black, or it's very, very light. If you can control those things, then you're going to be able to pull something off. I'm going to put some in-between lines here to kind of balance it out a little bit. The only white areas that you see are areas that I didn't close up entirely with the inking here. Let's see. Let's do the guys. Let's do Santa's eyes here. Let's see very carefully. Let's observe the way Rockwell did this here. I see the way the light is coming on the face here, so I can adjust hopefully fairly precisely to simulate the effects of the actual colored oil. Obviously we're not working in color here. We're working in black and white. These areas right here where I'm doing, this is where things get very critical. Without all this practice I've done, I wouldn't stand a chance. So there's some crosshatch going on there. How far do you want to take this? I mean, that's the question that is something to think about here. I mean, this is not a white area here on Santa's nose. It's a gray area. So do you want to put the hatching in there too, or do you just want to leave it open? For me, it tends to look better just leaving it open. But if I am going to go into these areas here, I'm going to keep it very controlled and very light. And leave plenty of white space. It just has more appeal if you do it like that. So I want to mention again that we're looking for a designer for Rude Dude. You have to be good. If you're good, really good, then you think you can make the grade, then send in your samples and I'll take a look at them and see how you do. Also, if you feel inclined to want to pledge while this is going on right here, I'm happy to accept that. That keeps me out of trouble and it keeps me working on what I want to be working on without having to take on extra jobs that are basically just the things you do for extra income to keep yourself afloat. And everyone's got those expenses going on all the time. House this, apartment that, car that, so that's the way it works in this world. Even the hippies found that out. They dropped out, but they couldn't drop out for long. So we're doing what somebody recommended earlier, which is turning the page sideways here. Yes, pretty much everyone works like this. If you can work without doing this, then my hat's off to you, except I'm not wearing a hat. But if I was, my hat would be off.
We have Joseph asking, when your artwork for publication is created, is there a reduction ratio you prefer? And is the ratio different than the one that you work with for illustrations or storytelling?
That's another really good question, because that's something that everyone has everyone hears about, but they never quite know how to field the question with any authority. Um, I've heard since the beginning of time that when you work large and it gets reduced, things tend to kind of combine themselves. That was true when reproduction was very bad, like it was in the '60s. I've never seen any real difference between when my painting is done this size, like literally this size right here, 20 by 30, it fits on my drawing board, to when it gets shrunk down to a 6 by 9 comic book size. I don't see the difference. It's still my painting. Everything is still there. So no, I don't have I don't that ratio thing. I've never. That's never really something I've subscribed to because I don't see it there. I don't see it as clearly as everyone made it seem like when you're growing up and you're hearing all this stuff from everyone. Another very sensitive area. Very carefully. Let's do now these areas here where it's going to get really dark. Um, that's not a problem area. So I'll just do my best to clean up some of this stuff right here, and then we're going to move on to the hand, Santa's hand, because that's going to be something that's going to require a lot more finesse. Let's watch what happens when I darken these lines here. We're going to meld with the shadow area. Where was that area? Is it over here? Oh, it was right here. So the light, dark, light, and dark. If you can control this and learn to control it through a lot of working with it, then you're going to be a happy guy. And who doesn't want to be happy? A little bit of cross hatching here is going to help, I think, just kind of cushion the area into the shadow area. See that? That's the way it works. Again, this is where a lot of people get into trouble right here because it's very easy to get to make it look less than the way you want it. Let's just call it. But the light is going upward towards his face. The light is down here and it's going up and it's giving that kind of shadow. So that's why I'm happy to go in there with this more of this cross inking kind of a thing.
We have Walter White tuning in, and he
excellent.
says, his comment is, Rockwell is the perfect blend of realism and romanticism. In my mind, he is the artistic equivalent to Ray Bradbury.
To Ray Bradbury. Yes, there's no doubt. Walter, by the way, is doing us a great favor with his. He's actually doing a lot of proofing and editing on the Nexus books, and he's obviously someone extremely well read and is big on research, and that's exactly what we needed, and that's what Walter supplies to the Root 2 company. So we're very glad to have him on board. This area stays dark right here. There's no light peeking in here. So I'm gonna do it like it's part of the shadow area. But you can see that there's a light creeping up in the side here of the hand. See, I'm just kind of changing the direction of my strokes just a little bit. So look at the Rockwell hand and look at the way I'm trying to interpret it here. And then you'll see what's really involved in capturing this conversion of pen and ink, black and white pen and ink strokes, to simulate what you did in oil paint. I'm glad this is going well today. After that last week's watercolor demonstration, I'm happy to do something that feels a little easier. Now all this is going to be dark. But this is where you have to learn. Boy, you really have to learn how to be. You really have to understand what's going on here with these paint strokes. How you try to simulate light areas and dark areas. What I want is a very studied transition between the different values going on in this hand. We have a dark over here, so the strokes are getting much closer together, and they're being a lot bolder. Do a very careful study of this right here before you just throw yourself into it. I think we have another question.
We have Russ asking, do they still make Gillette pen nibs, and where can you get them?
You can get them, it's an online world these days, and yes, I keep talking about the great advantage of what I had and the time that I was growing up and the time that I was born. It wasn't a problem to get these things in my 20s and 30s and all that stuff before that. Now I would say that you're gonna have to find them online. A great place to shop. I do all my art supply shopping online now. I never thought I would be doing that because my generation grew up going to the art store. Always handling and looking at firsthand these tools that we all used: the paper, the brushes, the paint brushes, the different kinds of paint, and all the wonderful things that makes you want to become an artist in the first place. I think I'm going to wrap it up right about now. I will show you the finished thing when it's done. But pretty much the way you see it going now is the way it's going to stay as far as finishing goes. The last thing I'll do is something that I think is important here. And that is, this side of the hand gets very dark because that is part of the shadow. The light streak that goes through it is where a little bit of light is hitting this hand here, this finger. So I have to reflect that in what I do here in the pen strokes here. So this is a very dark area, very dark area. So they have the space between my pen strokes have to be closed up quite a bit. So I'm going to go as bold as I can. I'm going to keep using the pen nib here because it's working great, the 170 July. This is pretty uniform throughout the entire thing, so that's what my goal is for this right here. So if we're getting a nice close-up of this, we're going to have, you can see exactly what I'm doing here. I don't think we've featured enough close-ups on these live channels here, these live broadcasts, because that's just ultra important. You have to see exactly what is going on here in detail, up close.
We have Vincent asking if you read the 1970s John Romita and John Buscema love stories from Marvel Comics.
Yeah, I've seen him, but I was always a superhero kind of guy. He was asking about if I had seen Romita's earlier romance work. And honestly, right this dark around here. So let's do some cross panel work right here to kind of darken this area. Well, Vincent sounds like a real connoisseur, doesn't he? Yes, he does. Of course, we have all kinds of people tuning into the Dude channel here, but obviously they're a step above the rest intellectually. Something we've always known. So you see what I'm doing here, guys? It's if I make it look easy, it's because it's very hard. it's if you're an artist and you don't want to be forgotten or just another artist that came and went. These are things you're going to look into and really think about. And you know, drawing is fun for me. I'm often amazed at some of the artists out there that talk about this just being a job. Man, if it was a job, I'd still be working at Pizza Hut. But no, this stuff is my lifeblood. I love doing it. I think you can get a pretty good idea of how I'm trying to handle this here. The masters could do it better, but I am doing my best to reach their ranks because that's very important. If I were to approach these masters today and show them what I did, I would want their approval. So that's going to be it for this time. Remember, we're looking for a designer and we're looking for pledges here to keep things afloat at Rude Dude so I can keep working at Nexus and not go back to Pizza Hut. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another live stream. Take care. I'm Steve Rude. You're you, and I'll see you later.